Hello and welcome back to my channel. I am Jordan and today I am here with a review of The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. This is the follow-up to The Handmaid's Tale that was written like 35 years ago, like in the mid-80s, like literally before I was born. But I loved The Handmaid's Tale. Let me just start there. You guys already know that because that was actually, I did a video on that last year when I actually read it, like a little over a year ago. I actually read it before I binge watched the series. And Dwayne and I have a whole discussion video. I actually watched that and it was kind of ratchet looking back at that. But yeah, I loved that book. So I was so gassed and so excited for the Testaments. I have been dodging anything that says the Testaments, like the Matrix, like the Plague. I don't want to see it because I really just didn't want to spoil it and I just wanted to read it and not know what to expect and to go into it. So I'm excited to give you guys kind of like my thoughts of it, but let's get into the synopsis. So again, this is a follow-up to The Handmaid's Tale. This is actually, the book is set like 15 or 16 years after where the last book left off. And this is not told from the handmaid's perspective. You have to kind of think of this like a completely different book, like it's set in the same town or the same country, I should say, Gilead, which used to be present day US or some parts of US. And it's kind of following like how this regime took over and where they are at now and where they're going to go and how is Gilead going to end up. You're getting the perspective from three main characters, one of them being someone who grew up in Gilead and that's all that they know. And you're getting the perspective of someone who was raised outside of Gilead in Canada who is viewing Gilead from another country's perspective. And then you're getting the third perspective, which was my favorite perspective, of Aunt Lydia, which if you're familiar with The Handmaid's Tale or The Handmaid's Tale series, Hulu series, that is Aunt Lydia is someone who has a lot of power within Gilead, but is still a woman at the end of the day. She does know of life prior to Gilead and had a life before Gilead. And that explores her life prior to Gilead and how she ended up where she is today and why she is doing the things that she does. So I appreciated that perspective so much. So I guess we should get into essentially my thoughts on it. Things I liked. I really liked Aunt Lydia's perspective. As you can tell, I really liked seeing how people evolve into the type of person that they become, what sparks different decisions, what sparks survival. And I liked the creative direction that was taken with some of the outside work as far as how Canada or another country would learn about Gilead and how the rest of the world is not getting involved and what is their real ideas of Gilead and all of that. So I appreciated that. And I also liked, because Margaret Atwood, if you're familiar with her writing, I only have read The Handmaid's Tale, and then I think the other book was The Year After the Flood, or I'm going to put it on the screen because I forget the title, but all of these have like religious themes to them on how religion has a play into structures and governmental structures. And I always am interested in that church and state separation and when those merge, how the world ends up looking. So I liked that this kind of dived more into the religion aspect of it. I also appreciated the fact that it was like, hey, let's follow up, because, you know, when you read The Handmaid's Tale, the way it left, I was satisfied personally with the way The Handmaid's Tale, the book, left. But I think with all the buzz with the show and all of that, people are trying to figure out like what ends up happening in the end. So I think that's kind of cool that Margaret Atwood was like, let me go ahead and write this. You know, she said, I think in the end of the book, like, you know, she's had like 35 years to figure out how all of this plays out. And this is basically the culmination of that. Now that I got into the things that I liked, the things that I didn't really care for that much is, I said I like the concept. I like the concept and theory. I don't know if I like the way the concepts were executed, because I literally was guessing everything. Not even guessing. I was pretty confident and sure I knew exactly where this was going the entire time while reading. Every step of the way, I knew what the next move was going to be. And that took out the excitement for me. I know it's a completely different writing style, but I feel like there could have been so many different ways that this could have been executed, especially with Mayday, especially with getting Aunt Lydia and all of these different perspectives where we really could have dived in deep to how Gilead's structure really works. I feel that in The Handmaid's Tale, you know, there was a lot of, you don't know how things are going to end up and you're on the edge of your seat reading this like, oh my gosh. This was more so like, okay, I'm reading this because I'm already invested. is how I felt, but I kind of know how all of this is playing out. So the way that we're using Gilead as a present day partial US to evolve into that, that's interesting. Even though those concepts, I appreciated the concept, I felt that there could have been more done to really play with those concepts and to really challenge current day US, like current day things that are happening in our country currently. And I think also I read this shortly after going to BookNet Fest, which I talked about, and Jerry posing that question on like thinking of the world that this person has imagined. And granted, none of the racial identities or none of that stuff is really, divulged or talked about. But I do wish that there was more representation of diversity within the book. And it kind of just seemed a little flat. If you're going to have 3 different character perspectives, I wish those 3 were truly diverse. Or at least some of the supporting characters could have had a little bit more to them. I felt like everything was surface level and it didn't really dig in deep, which, I think some of the criticism of the first book, although I love the first book, was that. So you think 35 years later, maybe some changes could have been made within the book to reflect that, especially when you're in a climate like now where there's so much discrimination against so many marginalized groups. I was thinking 35 years later that would have been explored and dove in a little deeper. So I felt like I enjoyed it while I was reading it. Did not live up to the expectations that I think I had in my head. It was a solid read, but I don't think it's like, wow, you have to read this. I say if you really love The Handmaid's Tale and you feel good enough with that, you can leave off there. You can leave off right there, because this, even though it answers kind of what happens to Gilead, it's not really giving you that much more besides a few other perspectives. So all in all, I would say that this is a decent book. Like, it's a good, okay book. That's why I'm like teetering. I don't know where I'm going to put it on Goodreads. On Goodreads, I was surprised. I said I've been avoiding reviews, but it's actually rated really high, like on Goodreads. But for me, I'm like in between a 2 and 3. I don't think it's as low as a 2. Like 2 is like, it's okay, but it's not terrible, but it's not good. This I think was okay good. Like, it's not good, but it's okay. Like okay good. I'm so ridiculous. Okay, well, with that being said, that's kind of where I'll leave you guys at. If you guys have read The Handmaid's Tale and you have read the Testaments, please tell me what your thoughts are, especially on the Testaments. I would love to hear, and I love when I do this. I promise I didn't wear green to match, but that's kind of cool, right? Please let me know what or how you felt about this. And yeah, let's keep the discussion going. Love and light, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Deuces.